From the time of Alexander the Great, the Persians with their thundering hooves, the notorious Mongol Empire, to the British Empire and the superpower Soviet Union, all fell before the indomitable power of the land of Afghanistan. I believe that it wasn't just human courage or the rugged terrain that defeated them. Something more ancient, more sinister, was lurking in the shadows. Imagine the overlapping mountain ranges, soaring like giant claws gouging the sky, deep valleys where light never reaches, and dark caves where the wind whistling through sounds like the screams of imprisoned souls. It was in these natural labyrinths that armies hid for centuries, but it was also there that traces of something not human were discovered. I heard footsteps, heavy like falling rocks, but no one was there. A soldier once whispered to me during an interview, his eyes vacant, as if haunted by horrific memories. Entering the 21st century, after the September 11th attacks, Western militaries, American, British, Australian, Canadian, set foot on this deadly land, bringing modern weapons and the determination to destroy the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. But they didn't expect that the real enemy wasn't just hiding in caves or beneath the dust, but also lurking in the chilling winds blowing through the Kandahar mountains.
Captain, I swear I saw it. It was over 10 feet tall, its eyes glowing red like fire. It just stood there, watching us.
A sergeant recounted in a report, his voice trembling, hand clutching his rifle as if it were his last charm. Through hundreds of interviews with soldiers and villagers, I realized that the terrain wasn't the only threat. Something lived in the darkness, tracking their every step. Stories began to spread. Giant figures flickering in and out of the fog, roars unlike any known animal, and deep footprints imprinted on hard rock. Traces of the giants. At Smoke Pit, we call these true stories, told straight from the mouths of soldiers who faced nameless horror, entities that science refuses to acknowledge. But I, Ethan, as a researcher, assert that Afghanistan is not just a human battlefield. It is the domain of ancient creatures, monsters once buried in myth, now awakened amidst the smoke and dust of war. A short pause. Take a deep breath, because the story is about to enter its darkest part, where the truth about the Kandahar giant will send shivers down your spine. Before delving deeper, I want to say that even these majestic mountains haven't escaped the encroachment of the modern age. Technology creeps into every cave, bringing with it the annoyances of the civilized world. If the giants have survived till now, maybe it's because they aren't bothered by spam calls, I once joked with a colleague. But behind the smile was an obsession with secrets humanity has never controlled. Be ready, because what I'm about to tell is not just history, but a living nightmare, where the line between reality and the supernatural is blurred. Cold wind hissed through the rock crevices, carrying the smell of parched earth and something else, putrid, like a corpse forgotten for centuries.
Does anyone feel like we're being watched?
A hoarse, trembling voice crackled over the radio, cutting through the eerily silent night in the mountains of Afghanistan.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Another soldier replied, his voice strained with fear.
Everyone, don't let that thing get close.
That was the obsession gripping the soldiers during Operation Enduring Freedom, launched after the fateful day of 9/11/2001, when America's skies bled and the world changed forever. Their mission was clear: eliminate the Taliban regime, the harborers of Al-Qaeda, the organization that had unleashed a nightmare upon humanity. With superior air power, the US military quickly crushed the Taliban in the cities, turning urban centers into heaps of ash under the fury of bombs and ordnance. But that victory was merely an illusion. The real war never ended. The Taliban didn't surrender. They retreated into the mountains, turning the treacherous rocky ranges into impregnable fortresses, where darkness became an ally and terrain a weapon. From deep valleys to frigid caves, they launched a bloody guerrilla war, stretching on for years, challenging every limit of the Western forces. The Kandahar region, strategically located between desert and high mountains, emerged as the Taliban's strongest bastion, a natural maze where even light hesitated to tread. For the US-led coalition, seizing these mountains wasn't just tactical. It was a matter of survival. The only way to choke off supply lines and extinguish the flames of resistance. The search and destroy strategy was unleashed with unprecedented ruthlessness. Elite soldier teams infiltrated the darkness, carrying weapons and the fragile hope of surviving the night. But I, Ethan, have read hundreds of classified reports and heard whispers from the survivors themselves. The Taliban were not the only threat in those mountains.
It wasn't human. I heard its breathing, heavy like grinding stone, right behind us.
A lieutenant told me, his eyes bloodshot, as if the memory still imprisoned his mind. Something ancient, enormous, and hungry was hiding in the darkness of Kandahar. Not insurgents, not wild beasts, but an entity far beyond any definition of war. In the search and destroy missions in Afghanistan, only the most elite units were thrown onto the line between life and death. US Army Rangers and Navy SEALs, the phantoms of the battlefield. They scoured every meter of hostile ground, from remote villages where dust obscured the light to deep caves within the mountains, where darkness seemed to have its own breather. Every step was a gamble with death. The ground could explode at any moment. The thin air cut into lungs like knives, and the wind whistling through rock crevices sounded like the mocking laughter of a stalker. Intelligence from reconnaissance aircraft, UAVs, and the trembling whispers of villagers played a vital role. But in the rocky maze of Kandahar, surprise was always the silent predator. The towering mountains, weather harsh enough to swallow all life, and the network of dark caves demanded not only perfect tactics, but also hearts of steel, devoid of fear. Danger lurked everywhere. Improvised explosive devices, IEDs hidden beneath dry earth, treacherous cliffs ready to claim lives with a single slip, and sudden ambushes that stained the mountains red. Casualties were an unavoidable price. Blood soaked into the sand, screams dissolved into the wind. But that was only the beginning of the nightmare. In early 2002, a horrifying event shattered all rules of war. A Special Forces patrol team in the Kandahar mountains vanished without a trace, as if swallowed by darkness. Radio waves fell silent. Not a cry for help, not an SOS signal. Only the cold, white noise static, crackling like a death knell.
Team 1 is not responding. It's been 3 hours.
An officer announced over the radio at the base, his voice dry, hand gripping the receiver as if trying to crush the truther. Red alert was issued. Immediately, a second Special Forces team, seasoned warriors with state-of-the-art weapons, was helicoptered into the suspected area, carrying the order. Find their comrades, dead or alive. They were prepared for every worst-case scenario. A bloody Taliban ambush, an IED minefield tearing through the formation, or bodies brutally mutilated by the enemy. But what awaited them wasn't in any training manual. It surpassed every fear humans could imagine. "Hold up! Look! Something's here!" The lead soldier yelled, his voice strained with tension, trembling hand pointing into the darkness ahead. Oh my God, this scene. "Unbelievable," a teammate whispered, eyes wide with horror as the flashlight beam swept across something that shouldn't exist. "Sergeant, here, this has got to be one of ours. Look at this gear. Like it was torn apart by some giant beast," a young soldier stammered, trying to stay calm as he touched a fragment of blood-caked uniform.
"Can we get a sit rep now?"
Another soldier's voice cut in, punctuated by ragged breaths. "Negative. Hold positions. Whatever did this might still be here. Weapons ready. Stay alert." The sergeant roared, his voice steely but his eyes darting as if feeling a gaze from the shadows. They followed the gruesome trail, tattered pieces of uniforms scattered everywhere, dried blood streaks dragged across rocks, and shattered bone fragments leading down a ghostly path shrouded in mist. An invisible fear began to gnaw at their minds. Warriors who had faced death now felt a chill down their spines, as if the very air whispered warnings from Hele. The steep trail led the Special Forces team higher, deeper into the heart of the Kandahar Mountains, where dark cave mouths gaped open like hungry maws awaiting prey. But it wasn't the darkness of the caves that made them hesitate. It was the piles of bleached bones scattered across the ground, from small animals to unusually large fragments, like relics of an ancient ritual that made scalps tingle. "Ah, the Taliban didn't do this. This isn't human work," a soldier whispered, his voice fading as the flashlight beam swept over the bones, illuminating strange scratches on the rocco. Before they could collect themselves, a primal roar, deep as if echoing from the earth's core, tore through the air, striking their chests like an invisible hammer, making hearts stop 'em. From the deep darkness of a cave entrance, a colossal shadow slowly emerged, each heavy step shaking the ground as if the mountain itself was awakening. It wasn't human, but a giant, standing over 10 feet tall, a tangled mane of fiery red hair like spreading flames, its body clad in tattered animal hides, jagged teeth bared in a threatening roar. In its hand was a crude wooden spear, twice the height of a normal man, its tip smeared with a dark substance. The dried blood of some unfortunate soul, the stench faint in the freezing air. The giant's eyes glowed, red as embers, locking onto the stunned soldiers. A gaze not of a beast, but of an ancient entity, bloodthirsty and cruel. "Oh God, it's looking right at us," a young soldier stammered, hand trembling on the trigger, sweat pouring despite the sub-zero temperature. Then, with speed unbelievable for its massive frame, it charged like a deadly whirlwind, the spear swinging through the air with a terrifying whistling. Before anyone could react, the sharp spearhead pierced through the chest of the nearest soldier, lifting him like a ragged doll, blood splattering, staining the ground reader. His scream was drowned out by the giant's deafening roar, a sound not of this world, as if echoing from Hela. That horrific moment broke the paralysis. Programmed by thousands of hours of training, the Special Forces team opened fire in unison, the roar of gunfire shattering the mountain's silence. A hail of bullets rained down on the giant. 5.56mm rounds, shotgun blasts, the deafening explosions echoing through the valley, turning the space into a hellish battlefield. 30 seconds, an eternity. Bullets roared, smoke billowed, and finally, the giant staggered, black blood pouring from dozens of wounds before crashing heavily to the ground, shaking the very mountainy.
Skinwalker 2, request repeat line 5, over.
The team leader yelled into the radio, his voice strained with panic, breath coming in ragged gasps.
I repeat, line 5-1, Alpha casualty. Sierra 1 is KIA, requesting immediate medevac, over.
He screamed, knuckles white as he gripped the radio handsetty.
Roger, copy lines 1 through 5. Stand by. Line 6, confirm again. You said Tango target was a, what, over?
The voice of the radio operator back at base hesitated, as if disbelieving his own earsea.
Damn it. Golf, India, Alpha, November, Tango, a very large man with a wooden spear, over.
The team leader nearly roared into the mic, terror and bewilderment making his voice crack.
I told you. Roger. Stand by for orders, over.
The other end fell silent, leaving only ragged breathing, as if the entire base was trying to process the unbelievable news. The Special Forces team stood there, guns still hot, looking at their fallen comrade and the giant's corpse. A scene beyond any nightmare they had ever imagined. This wasn't Taliban, not a hallucination. It was a Kandahar Giant. This situation report, the craziest sitrep in military history, left the command post stunned. After the report was sent, albeit met with skepticism from the base, the Special Forces team remained frozen at the scene, eyes fixed on the colossal corpse lying motionless under Kandahar's fading sunlight. Initial horror gradually gave way to cold curiosity. They couldn't believe the thing they had just killed was real. A creature stepped out of humanity's oldest nightmares. They approached cautiously, each step like walking the line between life and death, nostrils assaulted by a thick, putrid stench, a mix of musk and decay, as if the corpse had been rotting for centuries.
It's at least 13 feet tall. Unbelievable.
A soldier measuring whispered, voice trembling as the tape measure stretched to its limit, shaky hands noting the impossible number. But the detail that sent chills down their spines was its hands. 6 fingers on each, massive, crude, with claws curved like sickles. A feature Ethan, had read about in ancient texts concerning cursed giant racism. "Pry its mouth open," the sergeant ordered, and when a brave soldier did so, the team fell silent. 2 rows of sharp teeth stacked upon each other, like those of a prehistoric predator. Their eyes swept over the bones and tattered gear around the cave entrance. Then the horrifying truth struck their hearts. Nothing remained of the first patrol team. This giant had torn them apart and eaten them. Oh God, we can't bring them back. A young soldier collapsed, tears mixing with the dust, the grief surpassing even the fear from the recent fight. But they soon realized this corpse wasn't just their own nightmare. It was something someone high up in the military wanted at all costs. The roar of CH-47 Chinook rotors grew louder from afar, shattering the deadly silence, bringing not just reinforcements, but also metal pallets and cargo nets. They came to take this giant corpse away. The flight back was torture. The stench from the hastily wrapped body in the cargo bay permeated every breath, causing some soldiers to vomit right onto the helicopter floor. Upon landing at the base, the Special Forces team was separated, pushed into cold interrogation rooms, bright white lights shining directly in their faces. "Tell us everything, every single detail," an officer demanded sharply. And they recounted the horrific battle with the giant, each word seemingly pulled from the deep darkness of their minds. Then, non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, were placed before them, forcing them to swear eternal silence, a familiar procedure for special forces, but this time it felt heavier than ever. They left the Chinook having never seen the body again. No photos, no samples, no proof, as if it had all been a hallucination in the mountains. Who'd believe us anyway? A man-eating giant in Afghanistan? One soldier laughed dryly, but his eyes were empty, haunted by the indelible air. But secrets, however deeply buried, always find a way to leak. Rumors spread within military circles, then exploded onto forums and military news sites in 2022. The Kandahar giant became a modern legend, a terrifying piece in the world of cryptids, where truth and nightmare blend inextricably. Ethan, first found records of this incident in 2008, just 6 years after the event. Surprisingly, it wasn't buried deeper in the military's shadows. But the story's origin didn't come from the soldiers who pulled the trigger, but from a pilot, the man who flew the CH-47 Chinook, who saw the corpse and carried it out of those deadly mountains. I smelled it before I saw it. That smell of death. It clung to me even in my sleep. That pilot once told me in a secret interview, his eyes bloodshot, as if still imprisoned by the horrific memory. This story isn't just a military report. It's living proof that in the shadows of war, ancient entities still lurk, awaiting their moment to emerge. The story of the Kandahar giant first leaked to the public through the account of an anonymous pilot who appeared on the popular radio show Coast to Coast AM with George Noory on December 3, 2008, in an episode titled Hotspots and Giants. What convinced me, a researcher of this account, wasn't the drama, but his chillingly authentic restraint. He didn't exaggerate, didn't embellish, just told what his eyes had witnessed.
"I only saw the body when it was loaded onto the helicopter."
The pilot's voice came over the radio waves, deep and steady, as if suppressing the haunting memory.
"Transporting it. That's the part I know best."
He didn't recount the thrilling tale of piercing spears or roaring guns. Instead, he admitted the horrific details were just information he heard second-hand from the Special Forces team, like fragmented pieces of their nightmare.
"Like I said, that's second-hand information,"
he explained, voice raspy through the microphone.
"They said this thing wiped out the first team that found it. When the second team arrived, they found the giant, eating our comrades right in the middle of a killing field full of white bones. They said it ran fast as the wind, threw huge boulders from afar, rocks a normal person couldn't lift,"
he continued, breath catching as if reliving the memory.
"But our weapons took it down, because I saw the dead body myself."
The pilot described the body covered by a tarp and secured with cargo netting. But the putrid stench still wafted up, as if death fumes from centuries past were escaping the tattered fabrics.
"Oh, we only peeked through the gaps,"
he recounted, voice dropping low.
"It was terrifyingly large, unlike anything I'd ever seen. We weren't allowed to touch it, measure it, do anything. But I can't forget its hand."
He paused, as if the memory still gripped his mind.
"Looked like a human hand, dirty, covered in dirt and dried blood. But it had 6 fingers, 6 long fingers like monster claws."
That detail about the 6 fingers perfectly matched the Special Forces report, and more importantly, ancient records that I, Ethan have painstakingly researched. Traces of a cursed giant race from prehistoric times. The pilot's account wasn't an adventure story. It was the cold testimony of a man drawn into the darkness of Kandahar, where horrific truth surpassed all imagination.
When we took off, the smell from the body permeated every corner of the Chinook,
he added, voice trembling.
I couldn't sleep well after that because every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hand, like it was reaching for me from the darkness.
The giant corpse was covered by a large tarp, strapped tightly to a standard 463L transport pallet, 9-7 feet in size. But the pilot still couldn't take his eyes off the hand and foot sticking out from the tattered cloth. He wasn't allowed close enough to measure precisely, but the sharp eyes of a seasoned pilot estimated the giant's foot, wrapped in rough burlap or animal hide like ancient footwear, was at least 28-30 inches long, a size far beyond any human limitus. The body was forced into a fetal position to fit the pallet, but he asserted,
if stretched out, it had to be over 12 feet, maybe even 13 feet tall. A real monster.
As the one piloting the Chinook carrying the body, the pilot could feel its weight through every vibration of the aircraft. An unmistakable heaviness.
I can tell you about the weight,
he recounted on the radio show, his voice deep but steady.
When it was loaded, the total weight was around 1,500 lbs. Subtracting the pallet and netting, the body weighed about 1,100 lbs, as heavy as a large bear, but twice as tall.
When George Nouri asked for other details, he paused, as if the memory still gripped his mind.
The fingers, deathly pale, almost like Caucasian skin, not dark like the locals. Maybe because it was dead, but it still gave me chills.
Then he mentioned the stench again. Not just decay, but a thick musk, worse than a skunk, as if the body carried the breath of an ancient, evil world.
I joked with my crew that the loadmaster in the cargo bay must have wanted to jump out.
He chuckled dryly, but his voice faltered.
That smell. It clung to my hair, my skin, my sleep for months.
When asked where the body went, the pilot shrugged over the radio waves.
I'm not sure, but I got the feeling it was transferred to an airbase in Ohio. I just did my job, then they took it away. Had a meeting.
The interview mentioned Wright-Patterson AFB, the only major Air Force base in Ohio, and I, Ethan, immediately took note. That place isn't just a base, but a center of buried mysteries. Wright-Patterson has long been associated with chilling rumors, Project Blue Book on UFOs, secret laboratories, and stories of extraterrestrial beings hidden away in the darky. If the giant corpse was indeed taken there, I wouldn't be surprised. The US government has a habit of burying things they can't explain, and the Kandahar giant would be too big a secret to let out.
I don't know what they did with it,
the pilot concluded, his voice low.
But when we landed, I saw some men in black suits, no rank insignia, saying nothing, just quietly hauling the body away. I knew better than to ask.
A deep, heavy voice echoed from an old recording, purportedly from a member of the 2nd Special Forces team, pulling me back to the horrific moment on the Kandahar mountain.
It was a clear trail, a goat path. As we rounded the bend, I saw the cave mouth. No, not just one, but multiple caves. Black holes swallowing the light.
His voice faltered, as if the memory still imprisoned his mind.
Then I saw boulders, unusually large, scattered everywhere, and also bones. Wasn't close enough yet to tell what kind, but I swear I saw a piece of US military comms gear smashed among the debris. First instinct was ambush. Could be Taliban, could be animals, anything. The clearing before the cave was just wide enough for us to spread into a defensive formation, weapons hot, ready. And then it stepped out.
His voice trembled as if choked by fear.
A giant, at least 12 to 15 feet tall, a real monster, fiery red beard, hair past its shoulders, red as fresh blood. It charged straight at us. The shock froze us for a second, but then survival instinct, reflexes honed over years, pulled us out of the nightmare. Guns fired and everything went chaotic.
The recording abruptly cut off, leaving cold white noise. For me, Ethan, analyzing this tape was a turning point. It contained details absent from the 2008 pilot's account. The fiery red hair, the double rows of sharp teeth, and the scene of the soldier impaled by the spear. So, where did these vivid, horrific pieces come from? I traced the clues through military forums and obscure corners of the internet, and everything pointed to one source: a 2016 interview video. In that video, a man calling himself Mr. K, claiming to be a member of the Special Forces team that faced the giant, recounted the story with chilling detail.
It carried a spear like a tree trunk, fiery red hair blowing in the wind, and the teeth, like 2 layers of daggers stacked on top of each other.
Mr. K's account exploded like wildfire online. The image of the ferocious giant, the blood-stained spear, and the savage roar shaped the version of the Kandahar giant the world knows today. But the mystery didn't end there. Mr. K's video suddenly vanished from the internet shortly after going viral, removed for unexplained reasons, as if an invisible hand wanted to erase all traces.
I heard its footsteps before I saw it.
Mr. K had said in the video, his voice strained.
Heavy as falling rocks, fast as a demon. We fired until we were empty, but I still see it in my dreams, its red eyes staring right at me.
To me, the video's disappearance wasn't coincidental. It signaled a larger cover-up effort, where the truth about the giant was buried under the dust of Kandahar and the locked doors of the military. As the story of the Kandahar giant spread like wildfire online, even being mentioned by military times, one question haunted everyone. Was it all imagination, or was some horrific truth being buried? The US Department of Defense, unsurprisingly, quickly issued a denial.
We have no record of any Special Forces members being killed by a giant in Kandahar.
A cold statement, but to me it felt like smoke and mirrors. Instead of quelling suspicion, the denial fueled the flames of curiosity. People began whispering that the government was hiding something, a secret too big to admit. What's astonishing is that after the story broke, more and more service members from various countries, US, UK, Canada, who had served in Afghanistan, stepped out of the shadows, recounting their own chilling experiences. These new accounts weren't as dramatic as the Kandahar incident, but they were like cold puzzle pieces, suggesting the 2002 giant wasn't unique, perhaps part of a mysterious species still lurking in the Afghan mountains. I believe those desolate lands are not just human battlegrounds, but also the domain of ancient entities, forgotten but never gone. One of the first stories supporting this hypothesis came from a US Army infantry team leader serving in Kunar province, northeast Afghanistan, around 2008-2009, several years after the Kandahar incident. That night, under a pitch-black sky, a soldier in his squad peered through a new thermal scope, a Recon 3, when a teammate curiously asked, "Hey, is that the new scope?" "Ah." "Yeah, the LT wants me to test it out and then train the guys," he replied, adjusting the device. "I'm just messing around with the buttons right now." "How's it working?" the other asked, voice soft in the freezing air. "Well... Oh, wait a sec." His voice dropped, breath catching. "Looks like a couple of targets over there." "How many?" The teammate tensed immediately, hand tightening on his rifle. "About 2, 3. Hard to tell. Just a big heat signature, like they're bunched together." He squinted through the scope, then suddenly froze. "Whoa! What the hell is that? No way! Hey, how tall would you estimate those trees around there are?" He turned to his teammate, voice trembling, eyes wide with disbelief, as if he'd seen a ghost. "Huh? The trees? Probably 10, 15 feet or so," the other replied, not understanding. "That's what I thought," he mumbled, eyes still glued to the thermal display, where a giant silhouette dwarfing the trees was clearly visible. Something not of this world. It was taller than the trees, moving slowly like it was stalking, he whispered to me in a later interview, hands trembling at the memory. "I didn't dare report it, because who would believe me?" The story began with an infantry soldier, his voice deep as he recounted. "I was stationed in Kunar province from 2008 to 2009. One night, we were on patrol observation, watching a village suspected of being an IED factory, those deadly bombs hidden underground. The lieutenant gave me a brand new thermal imaging system, a Recon 3, and said, 'Figure out how to use this, then train the team.' None of us really knew how it worked." He chuckled dryly, but the memory that followed wiped the smile away. "I started scanning the dark valley, then along the mountainside where we were hidden. Cold wind hissed past, carrying the smell of dry earth and something unnatural." He paused, as if the smell still clung to his nostrils. Then I saw it. A massive heat signature glowing bright on top of a nearby false peak. At first I thought it was just Taliban huddled around a fire, like they do. His voice trailed off, breath quickening at the memory. I adjusted the scope for a clearer view. But then, the heat mass stood up. Not a group of people, but one single entity. Astonishment still choked his voice, as if he were reliving that moment. The trees around it were about 10 to 12 feet tall, but this thing, it was level with, if not towering over them. Its head poked above the canopy, like a giant shadow under the dim moonlight, he whispered, as if afraid it could hear. It started moving, parallel to my position. Long, slow strides, like it was leisurely hunting. But in just a few seconds, it covered a distance a normal person would have to run to keep up, he murmured. Only a monster could do that. It crossed the rough terrain as if rocks and thorn bushes didn't exist, then disappeared behind a nearby ridge. I stood there stunned, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped the scope, he recounted, voice trembling as if swallowed by the darkness. At the time, I thought I imagined it. I'd never seen anything like it, huge, agile, and not human. He paused, trying to erase the memory. I didn't tell anyone while I was still in the service, nor after I got out. I buried it deep inside, telling myself I couldn't possibly encounter that thing again. He sighed, but fear still laced his words. Then, in 2010, I heard Coast to Coast AM talking about the Kandahar giant. Everything flooded back. The heat signature, the colossal figure, and the feeling of being watched in the dark, he said, voice dropping as if pulled back by the memory. I started wondering, what other strange things had I seen in Afghanistan, but tried to forget? He whispered to me during the interview, his eyes bloodshot, as if imprisoned by the past. The soldier from Kunar continued, his voice lowering as if pulled deep into memory. For example, the creature in Kandahar was described as having fiery orange-red hair. That reminded me of a strange custom where I was stationed. The Afghan people there sometimes dyed their hair, and even goat fur, a bright orange color, like flames burning amidst the mountains, he said, eyes distant. They never explained why, just did it quietly. Every few months they'd dye them like that. Then one day, the orange goats would disappear. No trace, no sound. The villager's hair would fade too, as if nothing ever happened. He paused, breathing heavily. Back then, I thought it was just a weird cultural practice I didn't understand. But now, hearing about the red-haired giant, I wonder, were they communicating with it? His voice trailed off, as if choked by darkness. Or worse, were those goats sacrifices? He whispered, and the thought made my skin, Ethan's skin, crawl. An ancient ritual to appease something in the mountain darkness. I am a Christian, he concluded, voice firm but trembling. The Bible mentions the Nephilim, ancient giants. I believe that's what I saw, a remnant of a cursed race still living among us. But I must note one thing. He said he heard about the red hair from the 2008 pilot interview, but that detail only emerged later in Mr. K's 2016 account. His memory might have been distorted by time and rumor. Nevertheless, the link between the giant's red hair and the villager's orange dyeing custom is a chilling, eerie piece of the puzzle, like an invisible thread connecting humans to entities beyond understanding. Once, I saw an old woman in the village looking up at the mountain, holding orange goat fur, muttering something. He added during our interview. I didn't understand, but thinking back now, I felt like she was begging something not to come down. If giants still exist, hiding in caves and hunting prey as the Kandahar story suggests, then villagers sacrificing red-dyed goats to appease them isn't far-fetched. It's a terrifying possibility. But are they just flesh-eating monsters living in darkness? Or is there something deeper, more complex? The next account I gathered paints a different picture, more human yet deeply unsettling. This isn't just a story. It's evidence that an ancient connection exists between humans and these giant beings, obscured by time and fear, waiting to be unearthed from the shadows of Afghanistan. A professional voice came over the radio.
Reaper Actual. This is Raptor 1 TAC 1. Have reached grid coordinate 267-834. Observing multiple individuals around a fire. Requesting ISR scan. Over. Roger, Raptor 1 TAC 1. Maintain current position. Visually confirm civilian or hostile personnel. Over.
The command center replied, voice steady but sharpy.
Reaper Actual, Raptor 1 TAC 2 confirms 8 individuals, likely Afghan civilians. No weapons visible.
The operator replied. But deep down, a strange feeling began to stir. This account comes from a former US Air Force veteran, once a senior operator of the MQ-9 Reaper, the electronic eyes hovering over Afghanistan's skies, and he has no doubt about what he saw. I was flying a Reaper in the northern part of the country, he told me, voice deep but certain. Scanning with the camera like any other day, observing every nook and cranny of that desolate mountain region. There were small villages perched precariously on mountaintops, places I'd flown over dozens of times, faint points of light in the cold darkness. He paused, as if the memory pulled him back. Then that time. I spotted a tiny cluster of mud huts, almost swallowed by the mountain. And that's where I saw them, the giants. His voice trailed off as if disbelieving himself. They were at least 10, maybe up to 13 feet tall, he emphasized, the hands that once controlled the Reaper now trembling at the memory. The screen has reticle measurements, and they matched the width exactly. No mistake. They weren't doing anything weird, just tending a fire, milling around the small courtyard, doing mundane things like normal people. He chuckled dryly. I wished they'd do something crazy to prove it. But they were too calm, as if unaware I was watching. Nearby were a few tethered goats, tiny beside them, like cats next to humans, and a fire one of the giants was tending, he described, voice lowering as the image solidified in his mind. The image was grainy through the mid-wave infrared camera at night. They appeared as massive black silhouettes, radiating heat in the biting cold, he said, eyes distant. I couldn't see details clearly, but they wore thick, ragged clothing, like cloaks covering their bodies. The only thing that struck me was the size. The goats looked like toys next to them, and the small fire like a candle in the giant's hand, he whispered, as if haunted by the extraordinariness. I wish the daylight camera had been working then, he lamented, voice trailing off. I always wonder if they had fiery red hair like the Kandahar rumors, or if they were just shadows in my imagination. I only watched for 10 minutes, 10 short minutes that felt like a lifetime, before the Reaper flew too far, leaving them in the mountain darkness. He sighed, as if regretting an untouchable mystery. To me, this account isn't just a report. It's a glimpse into another world, where giants aren't flesh-eating monsters, but live quietly, mundanely, yet still exude terror from their sheer size beyond human scale. When I reported it, they told me to keep quiet, he added during our interview. But I know I didn't imagine it. They were there, in the mountains, like ancient ghosts that never left. I am Ethan, and now we come to the Giant of Korengal, where the drone's electronic eyes hovering in the sky not only hunted enemies, but also accidentally revealed chilling mysteries hidden deep in Afghanistan's darkness. Being a drone operator offers a superior advantage. An aerial view covering every corner, but not everything is analyzed instantly. Video feeds are often sent back to FMV analysts who dissect each frame like hunters tracking spoori. Full motion. Video. FMV. Analysts are the silent ghosts of war, their eyes glued to screens, scouring for every detail. Weapons, movements, or any anomaly in the pattern of life of those under surveillance. This account comes from an Air Force veteran, an FMV analyst serving from 2012 to 2018, who faced something beyond all training, a sight that sent chills down his spine in the cold, air-conditioned room. The video he analyzed was shot near the Korengal Valley, Kunar province, a notorious area where the Taliban stealthily moved personnel and goods across the Pakistani border, hiding in the rugged terrain like phantoms. His mission was pattern of life analysis, the habits of villagers or insurgents, when they woke up, where they went, what they did, whether they carried guns, all to prepare ground troops about to enter the danger zone. I did FMV from 2012 to 2018, he told me, voice low but sharp. We were soaking an area northeast of Korengal, analyzing everything with a heat signature the camera picked up. Initially, I saw a few guys around a fire. Normal stuff. We watched longer, looking for weapon signatures or anything suspicious. He paused, as if the memory still gripped him. After about 20 minutes, I thought I saw two guys wrapped in blankets sitting together. But then they stood up. No, just one guy. His voice cracked, the astonishment still raw. One giant guy, making the others look like children. He stood up, walked towards a mud hut and had to bend way over, almost crawl, to get inside. He described, hand unconsciously flexing as if measuring. The IR camera just showed me the heat blob, but I knew he was at least 8 to 9 feet tall. I couldn't see hair color. Infrared doesn't allow for that. But his size, my God, unmistakable. He whispered, as if someone might overhear. He wasn't a normal human. No way. He wasn't doing anything special, just milling around the fire like it was his home. He chuckled dryly. I wished he'd brandish a knife or do something aggressive, but no. He just existed there, like a colossal ghost. There were a few other people nearby, tiny like dolls compared to him, and I wondered, did they know? Or were they used to the presence of that thing? He murmured, eyes distant, as if looking back at the screen from years ago. This sight wasn't just a video clip. It was evidence that giants weren't only flesh-eating monsters in caves, but might live among humans, hidden in the remote villages of Korengal. I reported it up the chain, but they told me to be quiet, he added during the interview. They didn't want to hear about the giant, just needed to know it wasn't Taliban. But I know what I saw, and it hasn't left my head. The FMV analyst's observation in Korengal chills me. Not because of ferocity, but because it suggests the giant seemed integrated, or at least coexisting with local villagers in the mountain darkness. Afghans, with their strong tribal social structures, carry ancient customs and diverse cultures. I wonder, do these giants also have their own tribes with differences in customs, lifestyles, or even how they view humans? Are they all flesh-eating monsters, like the one in Kandahar with double teeth and a blood-stained spear? Or do some groups choose quieter, more peaceful lives, hidden among mud huts? I hypothesize, but the answers remain shrouded in darkness. Though just speculation from fragmented pieces, the idea of coexistence between humans and giants isn't new. It has echoed through millennia, from ancient Bible pages to the whispers of modern witnesses. The Bible speaks of Nephilim, Rephaim, Anakim, giant races from 5,000, 6,000 years ago. The soldier in Kunar once told me, his eyes bloodshot, recalling the heat signature, I believe they are still here among us. Most famous is Goliath, the Philistine warrior nearly 10 feet tall. His massive bronze spearhead weighing almost 15 pounds, like a death scythe that made the entire Israelite army tremble before his inhuman strength. But Goliath wasn't alone. The chronicles of King David 3,000 years ago tell of him and his warriors destroying other Rephaim, descendants of Rapha, in bloody battles amidst rocks and deserti. Further back, Moses and Joshua faced the Anakim, colossal figures that made the spies tremble, reporting back about giants before whom they felt like grasshoppers. One detail that startles me, Ethan, is the story of the giant in Gath, slain by Jonathan, King David's brother. He was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in all, records the 2nd book of Samuel, a perfect match for the Kandahar giant. 6 fingers. I saw them clearly through the tarp on the Chinook, the pilot once whispered to me, voice trembling. Like the Bible coming alive on the battlefields of Afghanistan. In tribes, the leader is often the largest and fiercest. I picture Goliath heading the Philistine army, or Og, king of Bashan, the last Rephaim mentioned with awe by Joshua. Og possessed an iron bed nearly 13 feet long and over 6 feet wide, not wood, because only iron could bear the weight of a giant like him. I smile grimly, imagining him crammed onto a modern soldier's cot. If Og really existed, he wasn't just a king. He was a nightmare, I mutter, flipping through Bible pages. And if Kandahar is real, then these giants aren't just history, but the present. To me, the convergence of 6 fingers, enormous size, and ancient records isn't coincidence. It's a thread connecting history to the Afghan battlefield, where humans and monsters may have intersected for millennia. But are they only predators in caves, or are there giant tribes living like the Korengal villagers? Quietly, closely, yet still possessing power far beyond humanity. The answer remains hidden in darkness, waiting for me to unearth it. Millennia ago, giants reigned over humans, fighting alongside them in smoke and fire. Now, in the last 2 decades, chilling stories resurface. They warm themselves by fires with Afghan villagers, like ghosts from ancient times who never vanished. There is a mysterious, cold thread running through human history, a terrifying continuity that I, a researcher, have only dared to touch, like opening a cursed book. The next account from Uruzgan province, central Afghanistan, not only reinforces the hypothesis that giants still hide in desolate lands, but also reveals they are interacting with humans right in the age of guns and technology. Hey, Dave. Yeah. Got anything with caffeine? I'm losing my mind, Edie. I saw something weird. The Australian lieutenant's voice cut through the silent night, weary and bewildered, as if gripped by the darkness. "Oh, what's up, LT? See insurgents?" his comrade replied, voice worried but skeptical, as if fearing he'd lost his sanity. No. It was... never mind. Probably saw wrong. Just stay alert. He hesitated, voice trailing off, as if admitting what he saw would make it a horrific reality. The narrator is an Australian Army lieutenant, possibly from the Mentoring Task Force or Special Operations. He sat in a lav, eyes glued to the thermal imaging screen, amidst the cold early morning mist blanketing the Uruzgan Valley. His mission was guard duty, scanning the darkness for Taliban. But what appeared wasn't the familiar enemy, but a figure far beyond any definition of humane. "I was stationed in Uruzgan," he wrote in his report, voice chillingly matter-of-fact. "One early morning, I was scanning the valley with thermals from the Elav, air biting cold, only the sound of wind whistling through rocks. Then I saw it, a large human figure, but strange, not wearing the robes Afghans usually wear." He paused, as if the memory still clung to him. It was lanky, unusually tall, like a distorted shadow. Thermals didn't give me much detail, and the distance was great. But I clearly saw it from the chest up as it walked behind some compounds. He described, voice lowering. It looked human, but not human. I watched it move, slowly, but each step seemed to devour distance, he whispered to me during the interview. I told myself it was a hallucination, but my heart was pounding, like it knew it was real. To me, Ethan, what makes this account stand out is its chilling authenticity. No exaggeration, no embellishment, just the cold acceptance of a soldier facing the inexplicable. "I never believed in giants," he added, eyes bloodshot. But when you see it through the scope, towering, silent in the valley, you can't deny it. It was there, alive, and I can't forget it. As the Chinook pilot once told me, when you face such a creature, even though reason screams it doesn't exist, your eyes and heart are forced to acknowledge the horrific truth before you. The Australian officer continued, his voice dropping as if pulled deep into memory. I lazed the compound walls a few times for distance because I knew they'd give a clear return signal. Initially, I guessed it was about 500 to 600 meters away. A normal observation distance, he said, hand unconsciously tightening as if still holding the device. But I wanted to be sure. When I scanned more carefully with the laser rangefinder, I almost couldn't believe it. It wasn't 600 meters. It was 1,800 meters. His voice cracked as if pierced by the truther. 1,800 meters, he repeated, eyes wide in memory. Nearly 6,000 feet. If a human figure is still clear from the chest up at that distance, then it's not just big. It has to be colossal, beyond anything I ever imagined. It wasn't rushing, he whispered, as if afraid to wake the thing. I watched it for about 5 minutes, each step slow but deliberate, before it disappeared behind the mountain shadow, like a ghost melting into the early morning mist. I don't know what it was, but it had to be at least 12 feet tall, over 3.6 meters, he concluded, voice firm based on the cold measurement. There's no other way to explain it. I never told anyone. He sighed, eyes distant. That image stuck with me through the nights, like a shadow that never leaves, but I kept